his host Eric, and I, perhaps unsurprisingly to you, am the host of Talking with Fitness People. I'd like to talk about a number of things on this live stream, but foremost, I'd like to talk about the show Naked and Afraid, Last One Standing. The final episode was this past Sunday. Today's Tuesday, so it's 2 days ago. Rachel and I watched it yesterday. And this is the second video that I've uploaded about Naked and Afraid Last One Standing. This is a live stream. I probably should upload another video about it, because the first video I made about Naked and Afraid Last One Standing, which I was very mad at everybody for bullying Jeff, has continued to receive a ton of comments. So obviously, Rachel and I are not the only people watching this show, and this is in stark contrast to the videos I made about Naked and Afraid of Love. Naked and Afraid of Love was not a very good show. Accordingly, it didn't get much action in the comments section, a little bit, but this show is vastly better than Naked and Afraid of Love. In fact, Naked and Afraid Last One Standing is the best season of Naked and Afraid I have ever seen. I mean, I don't know if you'd call it a season, really, It's not a succession of individual episodes that people do in Naked and Afraid. It's, they got the Naked and Afraid legends, put them all together and said, you're competing, Last One Standing wins $100,000. So, the thing about this is, in my first video, I was complaining about Jeff being mistreated. Most of the comments were in support of my position. Some of them didn't like Jeff, right? Which is fine. I'm not saying you should have to agree with me or anything like that, But, so that was a few weeks ago. Then we finished watching the show. We got to the finale. And the person that both Rachel and I least wanted to won the show, was. But my question is this. Did Waz really win Naked and Afraid Last One Standing? And my point is no, for two reasons. So if you take that question literally, hello, Mr. Robbie. The answer is no, because he cheated. So what I mean by no because he cheated is the instructions at the end were very clear. You must work alone. Now, Waz then proceeded to give tips and pointers to everybody but Jeff regarding starting the fire that he was unable eventually to start, and knocked him out of the show. That is cheating. You must work alone. Instead, Waz colluded with everybody but Jeff to give everybody but Jeff an advantage. Concurrently, incredibly offensively to me, he continued to maintain that he had the moral high ground, that he was right to ostracize, pathologize, shame and belittle Jeff because Jeff didn't take a communistic approach to the beginning of the challenge. Well, meanwhile, saying now it's fine for me to take a competitive approach to it because I did it right in the first place. No, Waz, you scumbag. Moral reasoning doesn't work like that. And this is the second way in which Waz lost. Waz finished this show with arms raised up saying, yes, and I did it right. I did it the right way and I won. I didn't behave badly. So he's going to get out that plane, or he got out that plane in Australia when he got back from Naked and Afraid. And everyone's going to celebrate him on two grounds. One, being morally upstanding, and 2, being the best survivalist. People may embrace 2, and I wouldn't have any powerful argument against them. But to embrace 1, you have to be completely wrong. What Woz did was selectively apply a shifting moral frame so that he was always in the right and Jeff was always in the wrong, while concurrently not actually evaluating his behavior at all. Woz is the one who told Jeff he was a narcissist. The only person in the show who didn't do anything immoral at all throughout the entire course of the show was Jeff. And how emotionally powerful was that show? That last episode was the best episode of Naked and Afraid ever. Rachel and I both, me more than Rachel, because I'm a big crier, you know. I was just sobbing in multiple parts of that. The intensity, the authenticity of their intense efforts, struggles, and I mean, the last challenge of the show was so difficult. It had just rained, and there was like 5 people left, and they all had to start a primitive fire with friction fire techniques. So like rub, hi Fiakyuk, hi Niebert. You do only live once, but I live twice, so anyway, this friction fire thing, none of them got it started in fewer than 20 hours of work. Like, it wasn't until the end of the second day of rubbing sticks together that Woz finally got a fire started. And give credit where credit is due. Woz is an amazing survivalist. And his approach to starting the fire was the best approach. He didn't just he adjusted one variable in his fire starting technique each time until finally he got it figured out. He went around and looked at other people's fires, gathered information, etc. He did the best job with the fire thing. But what he didn't do a good job of is morally calculating what was going on. At no point did he seem to understand that his pathologization of Jeff as a narcissist was absolutely false, ontologically abusive, and a full blast scumbag move. Meanwhile, Jeff, by the end of that show, I was just like, this is why, if you're going to have a religion that you follow Christianity, because I'm not so good at being at the positive moral indication side of Christianity. But Jeff's great at it. And everybody else in the show, after they watch it, should feel at least somewhat ashamed of themselves. Steven redeemed himself in full. He doesn't know why or how. He should not have forgiven Jeff for anything, because Jeff didn't do anything wrong. Jeff did forgive Steven, and that was good of him. Jeff forgave everybody, and that was good of him. So, even though Woz won the money, he did not win Naked and Afraid Last One Standing, because the real battle is the court of public opinion. And while after this last episode, people put more people put comments on my previous video, right? I was reading through them this morning. And there are more people who are anti-Jeff than there were on the first video, than there were before. But nevertheless, the vast majority of comments are pro-Jeff, anti-Waz. So I think that the slabs, yes, we're talking about naked and afraid in Christianity. Well, because I really like Jeff's variety of Christianity. He hates communism, and he's a friend to everybody. Now, it's not to say he doesn't make mistakes. Pulling a Jeff is an expression I have where I don't ever want to be guilty of pulling a Jeff. Pulling a Jeff is when everyone around you is starving and can't catch any eels. And every day you just go catch another huge eel and you and your partner eat it all and don't share any with anybody else. Okay? Like, he didn't do anything wrong morally there either. But he did fail to um, fail to account for the fact that, like, people who are struggling to catch eels don't want to hear him go, "Yeah, I got another eel. I live for this." So I mean, Jeff's not perfect. He makes some mistakes, but not wicked mistakes. Like, what's the most wicked thing that happened in Naked and Afraid Last One Standing, in my opinion, was calling Jeff a narcissist. Patently untrue, and an example of pathologization of the worst sort. Jeff is not a narcissist at all. He is a good man and an example for Christians everywhere. So, but I get that not everybody uses the same attentional manners to evaluate things. And for people who don't parse things like I do, it's not going to be immediately obvious why was wicked and wrong. The thing is, the producers of the show, this is another thing that is important to talk about. I don't think Waz is a narcissist either, Rachel. I think he's somebody who's not very smart. He's very good at what he's doing. He's smart at what he's smart at, right? But he's not intellectually equipped to determine statuses of people like that, right? And I don't doubt that he believed what he was saying, because I think Waz is probably FE fourth, possibly ISTP, and maybe an ESTP. I don't know. But the thing is, he's a TI user, one way or another, and but he's not an intuitive. So his frame of parsing moral stuff doesn't look up here ever, right? It just, this is where I am, this is what's happening, this is how the group has determined the moral equation based on their feelings, and that's my frame. And so he's locked into that frame. He never thinks about how morality works outside of Naked and Afraid. So I don't think he's a narcissist. I think he's one of the majority of the population, which is to say, somebody subject to being milgrammed. Being milgrammed is like, the Milgram experiment, they had these guys in these white lab coats with clipboards, and because they were scientists, and people just were like, wow, you must know what you're doing, and then they allowed themselves to be instructed to do a succession of horrible things and went along with it. Now, in this case, Waz didn't exactly initiate the narrative, right? He just bought into Matt's narrative and then decided, as an STP would, if these are the rules, I'm going to perform as best I can within these rules. I'm going to hit hard or go home, you know? So then, once he had determined that the group had condemned Jeff as bad, and he understood why they were condemning him as bad, then he decided to become the best player on that team, right? Hopefully, if there's any justice in the world, hopefully Waz will watch this video and learn something from it. I'm sure Waz is a perfectly nice guy. We all have to remember that they're putting almost entirely non-intuitives in a context that's very abnormal and is necessarily going to produce kind of Lord of the Flies effects, you know? The only way to avoid that is to have somebody like me there who can parse it all out and tell all those people what the correct position is, and who can win all those arguments, right? But of course, nobody like me is ever going to be on Naked and Afraid because I wouldn't last 5 fucking minutes out there. You know, I'd get one ant bite and I'd say, I give up, you know? So the thing is, and I also want to talk about editing a little bit. So most reality shows are vastly more scripted-ish than Naked and Afraid. The editors can shape the audience perceptions of the various parties involved somewhat, but they can only work with the material they have, and because the challenge is so real, it's just the editors have you have to worry less about being misled by the editors in Naked and Afraid, or buying into the editor's story in Naked and Afraid than you do in any other reality show. In almost every reality show, whatever's going on is not very informative about what actually happened, right? Because what they're doing is they're making a story out of video footage they have, right? But that's not really the case with Naked and Afraid. Sometimes, where did all the chats go? It's weird. All the chats disappeared. Huh. Why did all the chats disappear? They disappeared here too. What's going on? Can anybody, let me see if I can chat. Did people see that? Can anybody else chat something? Oh, Jeremiah Picks chat. I guess it's back working now. Okay. Well, I mean, all the chats disappeared. You can see it. You can see the old chat still. The first chat I can see on either my phone or the laptop is 11:27 test. All the chats before that are gone. So I don't know what happened. But yeah, like I don't doubt that Waz is a perfectly healthy, nice guy, but he wasn't smart enough to defeat Matt's arguments. Matt's arguments were terrible, okay? Absolutely terrible. But Matt's an ENTJ, and if you're not, and so even though Waz may be TI, he's not an intuitive. And so he just bought in. And of course, he's also evaluating these people on this weird metric of whether they're good survivalists and stuff. So he's got a lot of respect for Matt. Well, it's not about who's smarter or being a better manipulator or whatever. It's about what I'm doing now is defending Waz from an ontological critique. There's nothing wrong with Waz. He's not a bad person. But he wasn't equipped intellectually to not be a bad person on that show. Matt took his two fingers, put them in Waz's nose, and dragged him over here. And then Waz learned that's what I do. Now, Matt also is not a narcissist. Matt's a TE dom, and he's therefore incapable of doing moral calculations. Because moral calculations require you to deal with black and white matters and to not deal with more advisable and less advisable alternatives. TE doms always deal with more advisable and less advisable alternatives, and you cannot deal with moral reasoning like that. Who was the best manipulator there? Matt. But he lost because he hurt his leg. I read some comments where people are doubting whether he actually hurt his leg, but I don't doubt that he actually hurt his leg. And I would agree that had he not hurt his leg, then he would have been probably in the mix at the end, had a good chance to win the thing. But like one way we can redeem Waz is this. His behavior with Gary, he was encouraging Gary until it was obvious that it was no longer good to encourage Gary. And only then did he say, okay, you should probably tap, or whatever. Because at least there he was consistent in his particular thing he was doing. He did stay loyal to his gang of bullies, and he didn't forsake that and suddenly switch into, let me see if I can get Gary to go. So you gave him a little credit for that. But that's the problem with not being able to operate on a top level frame, right? Within his frame there, he did everything perfectly. But he never questioned whether the initial frame setting was right. So anyway, I don't think any of the contestants, when they get afraid, had any dark triad shit going on. Or equivalent, like BPD, blah, 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 blah. But I hope that they all when they got back and watched this stuff, that they all realize, oh, my moral calculations throughout this were not my own. That we were trying to do moral legislation by committee. And that is a disaster waiting to happen. It's like the best thing that could happen from that show is for those people to watch it, be confused, then watch this video and understand it's not their fault, but they need to have learned something from that. That that in fact they were the bullies, that Jeff wasn't doing anything wrong, etc. You know? So this show has made me into a huge Jeff fan. I always kind of liked Jeff, or just thought whatever about him, but I thought he was kind of loud and, unnecessarily so. But I really respect the man. I really do, because the way he dealt with that, I don't know if anybody else in the world could have dealt with it as perfectly as Jeff did. Despite the fact that he was subject to gang bullying, he sustained his moral position throughout. Because remember, his morality was framed before he got there. He's an intuitive. I mean, granted, he's an ENFJ, so it's not like he's going to be able to make all these arguments, but he didn't have any shifting moral frame. Not at all. He's a great guy and a great American. It's like I loved the way he said at the end, as he was pushing to get that fire started, till the producers came and said, "Jeff, the sun's gone down. You have to stop." What he said before that was like, no, they tried to bully him into quitting and stuff, He said, "Well, I'm going to push to the very end, and I will either advance or be one of the 14 losers." I don't sugarcoat shit, as we say, It made me cry. It makes me cry just thinking about it. So, okay. The next thing I want to talk about is how BPD people, how much harm they cause that is not direct, indirect harm they cause. And then fucking was, "Oh, I haven't seen so much guts in a long time, Jeff. Gotta give credit where credit is due." And then, as soon as Jeff's gone, I started talking shit about him again. Like, fuck you, dude. It's like he failed to update at any point his frame, and by the end of the show, it didn't fit at all anymore, right? It never fit in the first place, but it's understandable how he was led by the nose by Matt into this position. And anyway, okay, so BPD people. So, like, yesterday, Corey was getting ready to go, but before he went, Joe, I think you need to learn more about Naked and Afraid. These questions you're asking make no sense. You need to watch them Naked and Afraid. All right, so we beat. So Corey's leaving, and before he left, he in, insisted that we have a conversation in which he basically tries to fix what's wrong with Eric, right? Of course, there's nothing wrong with Eric, and I don't want to be fixed, and etc. You know, that's like I don't know if I should answer these questions. Put it this way: definitely, Corey has been abused in a variety of ways. Okay, and um, and the problem is that the abuse doesn't just harm the person being abused. It harms them in a way that makes them abusive to others. It harms them in a way that makes them adopt a BPD person's frame of reference, basically. So, like, last night in bed, I was really feeling blessed to be with Rachel, you know, and really feeling like, wow, she's so wonderful. And I basically started saying these various feelings to her, you know, like, you're so fantastic, I love you so much, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, um, something about love bombing. So, like, Rachel and I have the perfect relationship. But she's been in a relationship with a BPD person, and I have too. And we can still see the damage to this day. I'm authentically love bombing Rachel, you know, because I just want to drop love bombs on her all the time. But there's nothing manipulative about it, right? But because she's experienced the manipulative form of it, when I'm telling her all these wonderful things, it triggers, are you love bombing me? um, and uh, and when Corey starts, or like, you know, the reason I got so angry at Liz the one night when Rich and I went over there and partying or whatever is because I've been in a BPD relationship and her behavior triggered me. And it's like, prior to being in a BPD relationship, her behavior would not make me start screaming and yelling at her, right? Because I was just confused. Like, why aren't you listening to what I'm saying? Well, who else doesn't listen to what I'm saying at all? Corey. He's been trained not to listen. Because if you listen to a BPD person's words and take them at face value and try to respond to them, they've already beaten you. They're not using words in a good way. They're not using words to communicate, to express things, or anything like that. They're using words to abuse you. But And of course, then like, here's how you see how the BPD person's damage ripples out, right? So this morning I'm up and I'm still feeling mad at stuff Corey said to me. Because it's difficult for me to keep in mind the truth of the matter. That's not Corey talking, that's Liz. You know? And let me tell you this, Winston's mom. There's definitely, Corey is definitely physically abused no one. Okay? And he's not an abusive person at all, but he's been subject to decades of torture. So obviously he's PTSD about it, you know? PTSD causes people to react like A to stimulus B, even if, because stimulus B looks like stimulus A. Yeah, he's frame locked. Jeremiah Bakes, you nailed it on the fucking nose. He is frame locked. And the challenge for me is, I understand all of this, but I do not have any conscious relationship with my emotions. And so, no, Corey doesn't have a temper. No, I have a temper. This is the problem. Corey is mimicking Liz's bad behavior and treating me like him in the Liz and Corey relationship yesterday before he's leaving, right? I've been in a BPD relationship, so it's very triggering to me. And it makes me angry. The thing is, I have to remember and keep in mind that I'm the only one of the two of us capable of not doing that, right? And so I have to not do that. I need to call Corey later and apologize. Because it's like, but at the same time, it's like, okay, me and Rachel, our house, our life, we don't experience any of this stuff where somebody's attacking you, right? We don't experience that. Liz infused Corey with a bunch of toxicity, sent him up here, you know, and then that toxicity comes out. I should not be mad at Corey. When I woke up this morning feeling mad at stuff Corey said to me, that's an indication that I am not having enough, like, top level awareness, right? I'm just allowing myself to be dragged around by my emotions. And it's very hard for me not to allow that. The thing is, normally it doesn't matter, right? Because it doesn't, normally you might make me mad, I'll scream the exact same sentence that if you hadn't made me mad, I would have said calmly, right? And that's fine under normal circumstances because I don't need to worry about my emotions dragging me into saying things that aren't true. But this situation is not like that, right? The truth isn't especially helpful here, you know? Like, when he was attacking me personally, pathologizing me, etc., the truth doesn't help me there. The truth is, I understand what's going on. You're doing this. No, 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 right? What's required there is some sort of FI dump skill, right? Like, I need to be emotionally inert so that he can have a safe space to work things out, right? And that's hard for me because 7th slot FI is not inert, okay? It's indeterminate of anything. Like, so in other words, you have to get me extremely emotional for my emotions to make me make a bad decision. But that's only if we're evaluating it in terms of whether I've done wrong or not, right? It's easy to make a bad decision if we're looking at outcomes. So Corey's display made me mad, and then I made a bad decision, which was to tell the truth and use the truth, as I always do, to banish wrongness, right? That's not the goal here. The goal here is to heal Corey. Which puts me square in a TE framework. I gotta figure out how to solve the problem and achieve the outcomes I want. I hate those kind of problems. Like the trash can problem I encountered yesterday. That is the absolute worst kind of problem imaginable. I don't know anything for sure. There are no firm statuses about anything. And I just have to, well, is this the better approach or is this a better approach? I don't have any information. My intuition can't provide me anything. It's just horrible. Like I had one trash can that was full of chips of concrete, way too heavy for the guy, apparently, because the guy didn't lift it up and put it in the tank. So I had to infer that he didn't take that one away because it was too heavy. But I can't infer exactly how much too heavy is. So I split into 4 trash cans. Then I got 4 partially filled trash cans, and I got these 5 bags of trash. I could fit each of them. I could probably fit all of the rest of the trash in the 4 trash cans, almost all of it, you know. But then I'd probably make those trash cans too heavy, and so it's like I'm allowed 4 trash cans a week for them to take away. I got these 5 extra big black contractor bags of trash from the wedding. And my previous arrangement had set a precedent of $20 a bag, which is okay because it's like if I had ordered like a large pickup or whatever, it would have cost as much anyway. And I didn't want to drive all that shit to the dump. So I ended up just, it's like then I come back down, I did the TE thing. I'm like, well, as long as I'm putting these 4 trash cans up here right now, I might as well just bring the lids back down here. There's no reason he has to deal with the lid. Except then I have to consider the FE interface thing. This is the double interface problem. My worst, most hated kind of problem. So, okay, well, what message is that going to send to him? Like, now for the first time ever, this guy's presenting me 4 trash cans with no lids on them, and almost none of them are full at all. There's just a little bit at the bottom because of the weight. And now he's got 5 bags next to it with $20 bills on them. Is he trying to say, like, what are you, a pussy or something? Are you weak? So then I went back up there and said, well, just put the trash can lids back on the trash cans because even though it makes TE sense to not leave the trash can lids on when I pick it up in the morning because animals aren't going to get into it, then I don't want to run the FE risk, so I go put the trash can lids back on top. And then I'm sitting there with this A solution, possibly. I don't know if it's going to work or not. Is this what I should be doing here? Is this the best choice? I don't know. And I just walk and walk away, and later in the day go find out if it worked. It worked. But was that the best way to get that to happen? Could I have made it work without spending the $100? I don't know. And I'll never will know. And that's why I hate TE. It's like, people who can deal with those kind of problems, I respect it a lot. But I don't like things that never have any black and white shit in it, you know? I want stuff to be dealt with in terms of statuses, things that are static and binary. So anyway, Rachel, I'm not sure I'm not entirely sure if I interpreted that love bombing thing correctly last night, but that's how I interpreted it. Was you heard me telling you how much I love you, and it made you think of your previous boyfriend when he told you that stuff. He was lying. I'm not lying. And you may not have actually had that experience, but that's what I take away from it. Do I lift often? No. I lift, well, I lift every time I have to pick something up. Eric, I can easily lift 90 pounds over my head, and you might get away with that once in a while. So try something like 90 pounds, 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 20 pounds, 90 pounds. I'm like, why would I want to do that? What possible advantage would I have from lifting heavy things over my head? Sometimes I have to do that, but I just really don't want to do that. Do you think that's the case for everybody who doesn't have TE in the first three? Oh, my experience with TE? Yeah, probably. If you're trying to decide things on calculations of binaries, then TE problems will always just be like, oh, shoot me in the head. Because the thing I hate about TE is it's constantly dealing in vagaries. Like, in order to even begin a TE problem, you have to have a great deal of clarity about the desired outcome. And that, just starting off right there, that's the trouble for me. I don't have a lot of clarity about my desired outcomes. Sometimes I do, like with the trash cans. My desired outcome was to get all the trash taken away while spending a little money as possible. But it turned out that my top priority really was getting all the trash taken away. Nevertheless, it's not an absolute priority. It's not like, even if I have to spend $1,000 on getting all the trash taken away. So it's like, well, where exactly is your number limit? Well, how much, like, costs $30 to dump a carload of stuff in the dump by yourself, probably. I've never actually been to a dump up here, but that's what it costs in LA. And so, okay, I paid $70 for that guy to take all the trash, pick up all the bags, take it to the dump for me, right? In, in addition to the $30. That's fine. That seems like a good deal to me. But where exactly does it cease to be a good deal? I'm not exactly sure where that is. And what would I have done had my trick not worked? And what would I have concluded had my approach not worked? Like, so let's say I got back up there, and this time he had left the bags with the $20 bill on them. Would it be because I didn't put enough money on them? Would it be because there were 5 bags this time? And that's too many. Would it be because I have no way of knowing except by talking to the guy? And because I'm every third and a child about it, the last thing in the whole world I want to do is have a conversation with the garbage man about how to do this stuff. Because I'm defaulting to assuming he's probably mad at me. After all, he didn't take that trash can last week. He's probably mad at me for putting a trash can that's too heavy up there. I don't want to talk to him. You know? TE. For those of you who are good at that stuff, all praise is due, man. That's important stuff, and it's so hard, and I'm impressed by you. I don't want to have that skill, but it's an impressive one. Yeah, TE problems are annoying. And TE solutions are so gratifying. Like, the day of the wedding, I got up with hours of work still to do. And Cameron, by doing it smarter, chopped off, I love you, my darling.
I love you too.
And I'm not just love bombing you.
No. I did not think that you were love bombing me at all. I was actually mentioning it because I was wondering if Liz was going to love bomb Corey when he got home.
Nevertheless, I gotta think that because it occurred during a time when I was guessing my love at you,
of course,
there must have been some associated trigger there.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, I wasn't offended. I wasn't offended or anything.
Okay.
It just made me start thinking about how DPD's impacts extend much beyond the person that is directly impacted. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, I haven't woken up mad in a while, you know? I am certainly not mad at stuff people said to me.
Yeah, it's true. It's been a while.
And it's like, I did my best to anticipate and talk to myself about the risks to our healthy, happy life that would be incurred when Corey arrived. But I didn't factor in any emotional stuff. Like, I didn't factor in that it was going to emotionally impact me. I didn't realize, the whole 4 days, periodically I'd look at Rachel and she'd look like she was about to cry, and she'd be looking at Corey. Because she was understanding the state of, the horrible state he's in, you know, like how much he must be suffering and stuff. Meanwhile, that didn't really hit me until last night after he left.
Well, that's
bipolar, you know. And then when it did hit me, I felt so bad.
No, never stop telling me how much you love me. I freaking love it.
Well, I won't. But, you know, the advantage of their damage is, despite the fact that it infused this wonderful, healthy life, relationship environment and stuff with some toxicity, it also drove home in stark resolve how lucky Rachel and I are to be with each other.
Yeah.
Because we've both been in healthy relationships before too, where that still didn't work, right? Where the person wasn't BPD, wasn't abusive, but our fundamental incompatibilities made such that the relationship didn't work.
Yep.
To have two non-toxic people, Rachel and me, also be have the same healthy ideas about what it means to be a good relationship partner and be compatible, that's hitting the trifecta that almost nobody hits. And it's tragic that almost nobody hits it, but I'd never said this about any relationship I've been in before, but I don't know anybody in a better relationship than me. I don't know anybody in as good a relationship as me. Even relationships that can only be stated as 100,000,000% successful. Here, use this, it's easier. Here you go.
Thank you.
Like my parents. My parents had, by conventional understanding, a perfect marriage. They got married when they were like 25, and they were married like 60 years later. But their relationship was vastly inferior to mine. And the thing is, my relationship with Corey is deep and significant, like my relationship with Rachel, because INFJs and ENTPs are meant to be together. But my relationship with Corey is vastly more difficult than my relationship with Rachel because Corey has been injected with toxicity for decades. And the thing is, naturally, his ego is extremely fragile at this point. My ego is not at all. So, I need to understand that he can attack me all he wants. I know I'm right, and I don't need to win any arguments.
Yeah. I was learning today that when it's malignant, borderline personality disorder, which he's dealing with one, that the longer you're in it, the harder it is to get out, and that you do take on traits of the person.
Right. Well, I'm planning on calling him today. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that there's action ensuing from plans. Because to the extent that I can do anything that accomplishes the dissolution of that marriage, I will do it. As long as it's moral and righteous, you know.
I hope it's okay. I told him that, and I think you did too, that if it gets to a point where it's like, he's gotta like,
I told him if you go home and she starts being abusive, just get right back in
yeah,
the car and come back
yeah,
here.
that's what I told him too.
Anyway, I gotta call him today. I'm gonna apologize and also say this is a tenuous time. VPD people are very good at manipulating people. Very good at accomplishing the outcome they want, which is an emotionally volatile disruption that then results in some sort of like full emotional release that ends in hugging each other, right? Like, that's such a tricky kind of manipulation because you walk away from it thinking, oh, it ended with us resolving it. It didn't end with you resolving it. It ended with her breaking you on a certain point and getting you to concede something and agree with something and surrender to something that you should never have agreed or surrendered to.
Yeah. I also learned that within borderline personality disorder, a form of manipulation is that they'll be like, I've been through so much in my past, and they'll get you to sympathize with them.
Right.
So that it seems like, oh, you sympathize with them.
Well, I mean, the BPD person successfully makes the relationship all about them. And the way they do that, one of the ways they do that is they explain to you over and over again how these elements that are wrong with you are either the cause of or contributing to their bad behavior. Yeah. Even though it had nothing to do with it. Because I guess maybe the central damage of BPD is my negative feelings are always someone else's fault. Mm-hmm. Sometimes your negative feelings are someone else's fault. If somebody wrongs you, your negative feelings are their fault. But if they haven't wronged you, your negative feelings are your responsibility. So, BPD people never learn that. They never learned that because when they learn about negative feelings, they are correct. It is the fault of the person who's abusing them. Mm-hmm. But they learn the lesson that negative feelings mean I am being abused.
Right. Liz expressed that she doesn't get the proper love she needs from Corey.
Yeah, like Corey needs to understand that women have feelings and they need love and he's not loving me properly. And I say, well, what about his feelings, Liz? And she'll just ignore the question or something.
Yeah,
like just not hear the question.
She basically said that like he doesn't have feelings.
It's crazy, right? But what she's, and in part, her BPD is expressing in her non-cognitive function wrongness frame, right? Like, she had no way of even potentially mapping the fact that Corey's relationship with feelings is the mirror of hers. Like, she feels them herself. He's attending to how other people are displaying their feelings. She can't conceptualize any any correct intellectualization of feelings because she doesn't have any cognitive function knowledge. And this is what faces everybody. So why am I more correct than everybody else? Only one reason. Because I was the dummy who was digging around in the trash pile of MBTI long enough that I actually figured it out. And once I figured that out, it gave me an insurmountable advantage over everybody else in the world. That's the truth. It's not that I was especially smart to figure it out. It took me forever. And it's definitely not the case that I was smart to try to figure out stuff in MBTI, because a smart person would have surveyed this MBTI pile of garbage and said, this is garbage. Right? Mm-hmm. But I'm more intuitive than I am smart. And my intuition was saying, this really resonates as correct, you know? So, once Corey's arrival, that infusion of toxicity is what unblocked a lot of knowledge and information for me. So, that's how you beat BBD people at their own game, is by understanding correctly. Then their toxicity only makes me stronger. If you understand everything correctly, then every instance of toxicity that comes at me is merely informative. But my challenge is I am a complete retard at not being triggered emotionally by people. Normally it's not a problem because I'm where I should be. I'm in this box where words mean what they mean and tone doesn't matter. But if I'm gonna, because I understand, it is possible now, in theory anyway. If it's possible in practice, I do not know. We'll find out. But it's possible in theory anyway for me to choose to I wouldn't choose to attend via some other fashion, right? I choose to attend internally by the same fashion rather than speaking it out loud. Now, I'm a talker. I'm an any dog. My nature is to speak things out loud. But it's also just as much my nature to have those same conversations in a slightly different format, like in a more like shorthand way, in my head. I know I can do that too, right? So, and I do have FE conscious. It's hard for me because it's third slot, but it is definitely plausible that I can keep in mind my FE goals and my FE that I want most of all to validate on FE. I keep that in mind consciously, that it is within my cognitive function stack power to not say things I think out loud. To not convey to Corey what I know, do not provide him information that if he were to listen to it and understand it with his third slot TI would resolve things, right? Because just as it's extremely difficult for me to keep my mouth shut with my third slot FE, it's very difficult for him to parse things, to make himself parse things with his third slot TI. It is possible, and in a safe, happy, optimized environment, he will be empowered to use both modalities, FE and TI, you know? Under continual ontological assault, he can do nothing but, he is excised his third slot as much as he can. He's only using his tool and his dominant function. And basically, he's fetus shaped into who he is. The core of who he is. NIFE. And it's like somebody who's under assault is even less capable of using their weaker functions effectively, or including how those functions inform reality effectively at all, than a normal person. So what I'm saying I'm going to have trouble doing, which is keeping my mouth shut and saying things that prioritize outcomes rather than this is right, this is wrong. That's exactly what I was expecting him to do at a very high level. You know?
It kind of makes sense though, because like I lost a lot of TI reasoning in a toxic environment too. So it's like I was running on mostly NIFE and
right, because if the world's telling you you're bad, you know who you are in some sense, right? And so you'll get convinced gradually. Okay, I'm bad at my fourth slot, I'm bad at my eighth slot. Okay, I'm bad at my third slot, I'm bad at my seventh slot, I'm bad at my sixth slot. Okay, I'm bad at my fifth slot. And then you're like, you're fetused into my first and second slot. I know I'm good at that. I know that because that's who I am. The thing is, I'm not that deep into I want to steal the Scientology term, clear. Rachel and I are clear, which is to say, it's not about us. It's about we're among a very tiny number of people who aren't on any battlefield. We're civilians. Almost everybody in the world is not. When you're a civilian and it's safe, you know, then I can consider how I can do a better job of being me by not being me. If I'm under fire, I can never consider how I can do a better job of being me by not being me. So I have articulated this morning a very concrete path of not being me that's preferable to being me for a very specific context. And I can articulate exactly what that means, right? Like, in this instance, it means I'm going to not be me by being the more difficult ways of being me. And I can safely do so because I know whatever's going around here, no bullets or shells are going to hit me. You know, Rachel, Delilah, they have all of the weapons. They can hurt me. Nobody else has any of them. And I can trust 100% Rachel and Delilah. Most people, I can trust 100% Rachel, 99% Delilah. And the reason is because Delilah's not an intuitive. Not because she's not perfect. What is a delivery truck? There's a delivery truck.
Oh.
So that is the amazing power of cognitive functions. Like, if you understand enough to understand what just was said, your mind should be kind of right now. I mean, mine is because, of course, I understand things by explaining them. As I'm explaining them. So, this is all new to me, too. You know, it's like people assume that when they hear somebody explain something, that person knew that explanation before they said it. That's not necessarily the case. It's frequently not the case around here. I'm understanding this now as I'm explaining it, just as you are understanding it now to some extent, more or less, as I'm explaining it. Because I'm in an e-dom. What's that?
We got a sweater.
Cool.
Yeah.
We got a sweater. Exactly what you need in July.
Tell you things before they.
I'm not critiquing you, baby. I'm happy you got a sweater. Good job, dude. I don't give a fuck. You want to buy a sweater in July? Buy a sweater in July. But I'll tell you one thing that I gotta give credit to Becky for. She's the one who said the sentence, the first time I ever heard the sentence, criticism kills love. Becky is not a good person. Obviously very damaged, whatever. But that sentence has been so helpful to me. She said a lot of smart things that were very helpful to me. You know? She's a smart person. And very insightful. Very intuitive. She's an ENTP, you know? And that's why people do not abuse your children. They turn into just wrecking balls. They destroy lives after you abuse them. You've not just destroyed their life, you've destroyed a bunch of other people's lives too. Do not abuse children. and don't abuse anybody, but like Corey's a lot better off than Liz is. He can heal. She can't. We're being eased into a big reveal? Wait a second. Do you think this is a strip show? Because I'm leaving my clothes on. So anyway. This is extremely interesting. Everything's extremely interesting right now. And it's also like I'm living as a human being for the first time in my life. And it's impossibly tragic how few people get to live like human beings. What I mean by that is they exist in a place where they have liberty to do whatever they want. They are valued for exercising that liberty. In other words, there's people around them who say, it's wonderful that you're doing what you want. And you're empowered to do the things you want to do the way you want to do them. Instead of undergoing a mix of ontological assault and affirmation, you just have affirmation, unless you do something bad, in which case you're appropriately informed that that has consequences, right? By experiencing those consequences, right? And even when you do something bad and experience consequences, it doesn't impact any of the critical people around you opinion of who you are. They still value who you are immensely, and they see that badness as an anomaly, or the example that proves the rule. You know, the counterexample that proves the rule. So it's like you can't define anything without having without understanding what is not, what isn't it, right? So it's like if you're a loving person and you truly love your partner, and he or she makes a mistake, you're both in agreement that he or she made a mistake. You're both sad about it, briefly, and you both don't have it impact your opinion about yourself. You just have it impact your behavior going forward, right? And the thing is, this is just like what's coming out here in this video today. If you are equipped with the prerequisite knowledge required to understand what I'm saying, is incredibly powerfully informative and insightful. And one of the ways in which is that is me realizing that, as with Corey's frame, he frames what he makes as not of his own authorship, right? That he receives it from the divine and should not be credited accordingly. I understand now the same is true of me. In some ways, in like almost every way, these insights are just part of the long exhaust trail of Carl Jung's work, which itself is a culminating moment in the exhaust trail of a bunch of other things, right? The only reason I'm able to have these insights is because Corey was here, both being Corey, extremely intuitive and brilliant and whatever, and toxic because he has been abused for so long. It's cognitive functions that you get the credit for everything. Before I understood cognitive functions, I was just as wrong as everybody else. I was righter in there, here, but all of that was fundamentally misleading anyway, so I was just as wrong as everybody else. Because you cannot be right in your understanding of the world without a cognitive function frame. The reason you can't be right without a cognitive function frame is because the accurate description of how people be is they attend via 4 different kinds of attention: knowledge, interface, deliberation, and action. And there are 2 each of those 4 things. Why is it that way? Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if that question is meaningful, but why should we affirm that it's that way? I can give you mountains of cases, but that's the thing. People, only INTPs are going to be convinced by that. Only INTPs. That's it. The only people who are going to be convinced by me making the most powerful possible case for cognitive functions are INTPs. For everybody else, it benefits most when I have particular insights that resonate with them, and they're not probably operating map first like I am. Nevertheless, it's the case that they have their ways of converting the truth into useful knowledge. They're not my ways, so trying to make big case explaining things is not going to help them understand it. But I shouldn't underestimate their stack. They have their ways, somehow, that I don't understand, of converting the truth into useful knowledge. Okay, I guess I'm going to have another cigarette, then I'm going back inside. The other thing is, of course, there's the vector of chaos. By chaos, basically, I mean drugs. So, Rachel and I currently have a healthy, happy relationship. I wouldn't say very, okay? A healthy, happy relationship with drugs, but an imperfect one. Like, when you're trying to bring the right amount of chaos into your life, that's a tricky job to manage. Because it's true. Chaos is important. Corey coming up here and infusing a bunch of chaos into us, not just from drugs, but with his just general chaoticness, because he's in such a place, right? Um, that was critically important. It unblocked a bunch of shit, and all kinds of knowledge and information and insight and etc. came out of it, right? But every time you include chaos, you run the risk, you increase risk. And my becoming a real human being, my actualization, includes this process of always prioritizing don't be reckless, right? You're gonna have to take a few risks, but never ever be reckless, and always safety first, safety first. So part of this actualization process is I needed to have that experience where I had that psychotic break on mushrooms and experienced consequences from letting the chaos get out of control. Now, what that taught me was you can't always treat life like poker, right? It's true that I didn't have any proactive reason to anticipate that happening. It's also true that I wasn't being careful. So, after last night's stream, towards the end of it, it sort of struck me like, hey, am I way more sprung than I think I am? Because I'd just taken 2 of the Adderall in the morning, and but I was wide awake and full of energy and stuff, right? And for me, I had this brief period of, I guess you'd call it PTSD, where I felt like I had felt after that mushroom trip, right? Like, oh shit, I was reckless. Hadn't really been reckless that time, but I wasn't being careful, right? And I'm putting everything that matters at risk. Now, in the end, I concluded that I was wrong about that. That, in fact, that was just a PTSD thing, that I wasn't way more sprung than I thought I was. That, in fact, it had been a rather calm weekend until Monday morning, and that the alternate explanations for why I was so energized were more correct than my fear, which was, this is sneaky, super strong Adderall, and I'm really sprung and I don't know it, right? That wasn't the case. I was sprung, but I was sprung on a variety of things besides just a couple Adderall I'd taken early in the morning. They're not that sneaky strong. So, like, that kind of experience, all those kinds of experiences are teaching me so much. so much that I never have learned. I could never have learned until I was clear. Clear of the battlefield. In a space where no one's attacking me. In a space where no one doesn't understand, right? Like, Rachel and I can understand everything. We're not confused by a certain conflict or whatever because we understand cognitive functions. I had an insight the other day, last night, about confused. So, people use the word confused as though it were something they could recognize. I'm confused. What do you mean? Blah, 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 blah. No. If you're confused, you don't recognize that you're confused. Just like the assumption I was making that my being correct must have something to do with intelligence was confusing me. I was unaware that I was making that wrong assumption. Because I was confused, I was unaware of it, right? People use the word confused to mean you're not being clear, or can you explain that in simpler terms because I don't know what all those words mean. That's not confused. Confused is what I was when I was unaware that I was making an assumption that I shouldn't have been making. That somehow my being correct linked to my being smart. And it caused some kinds of, well, it caused dissonance accordingly. So it's like what I was aware of was that the statistical unlikelihood of me being the one who figured it out was so highly unlikely as to almost be impossible. I knew I wasn't that smart, right? That's confusion, see? What I didn't know was I was making a faulty assumption. Oh. So anyway, this is possibly one of my best live streams ever. And so I'm going to end it right now so that it doesn't become shitty. Thanks for being here. I love you. See you later.